Hey, FCC fans, you could show your pride in a whole new way with the new FCC Visa debit card from First Financial Bank. First Financial is the exclusive banking partner of FCC, and they are just as committed to this club as you and I are. Not only does the card look awesome, but it also gets you discounts on FCC tickets and merch. Find out how to get yours and to see the account terms and conditions at bankatfirst.com/FC Cincinnati. First Financial Bank, member FDIC. Hey, what's happening? It's Cincinnati Soccer Talkers. Welcome to the big show here on Monday evening, talking all things FC Cincinnati. FC Cincinnati falls over the weekend to Toronto FC 5-1, so we'll be talking about that match. We'll also be talking about the new Academy squads getting their first official action over the weekend as they made the trip up to Minnesota United to take on the Loons Academy system. And, of course, last week was the big town hall. Jeff Birding and Gerard Nightcamp and Ron Jans all in there in front of the FC Cincinnati fans. And they took the questions. So we're going to recap that here on this week's show. I'm glad you're with us here on this Monday evening, live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. So if you are watching us live, we will be monitoring the chats all night long, folks, so make sure you get those in. We want your feedback. Of course, if you're not watching us live and you're listening to the podcast version of the show, you can always email us at feedback@cincinnati-soccertalk.com. All right, let's welcome in my cast of characters for this week. I will start with Coach Goff. Coach, how you been, buddy? You good?
I'm good, Subs. Call me crazy, but I was sitting in the stands on Saturday watching FCC play Toronto, and I wasn't miserable. I had a pretty good time. The weather was gorgeous. We had a couple of U.S. national team stars in the stadium, and, other than some really key moments, and I'm not trying to sugarcoat anything, but other than some really key moments, the team played some exciting soccer, and I enjoyed watching it other than, the end result.
Well, I'm glad to have you back. You've become quite the regular here on the Monday Night Show. We appreciate your deep analysis each and every week, so I'm really looking forward to getting your thoughts on what happened over the weekend with the Orange and Blue. Of course, we welcome back to the show the man, the myth, the legend, Bill Wolf. Bill, it's been quite a while. How you been, bud?
Oh, good. It has been a while. It seems like schedules just haven't lined up, and I don't know exactly what it was, but I know there's been a few weekends or weeks where you've asked, and I just wasn't able to do it. So it's great to be back. I actually didn't sit in the Bailey for the last game. I was sitting out in the stands as well, watching the game. Different experience for me. I like it. I like watching the game. I'm not sure I was quite as positive as Coach was about the whole thing, but that's fair. And, certainly missed my friends in the Bailey there. But, it's good. It's good to have the other experience as well.
Man, It's good to have you back. I think you had a couple trips out of the country. I think a move-in weekend also went down. So you've had a lot on your plate, man.
Yeah. I got the son back to Indiana University, moved into a house he's sharing with a couple roommates. And, yeah, work has been a bear. But that's the same story everyone's living. So. No point in living that one. So,
well, we're glad to have both you back here on this week's show. Like I said, a lot to digest over the weekend. FC Cincinnati falling over the weekend to Toronto FC 5-1. Yet another one of those games where they concede goal after goal. So I guess rather than really dive deep into this, let's get your initial thoughts. And you kind of touched on it a little bit, Coach. You seem to think that there was a little bit of an improvement there, but again, it felt like half the roster was not around and had to be a little bit of a makeshift lineup for Ron Jans.
Yeah, I think it's kind of sad, but even saying there was an improvement is probably overstating what I'm getting at. We were talking offline here about what we're looking for in the team as we sit and watch these games. And, at this point, it's we were saying it's not even preseason action here. This is Ron Jans and Gerard Nightcamp trying to figure out who they have, what they have going forward, trying to instill a system. And so I'm just enjoying sitting back, trying to analyze that and pick out what I see that's working, that's not, who I think might stick around because of that, and who I'm pretty sure does not fit in with Ron Jans' plan at all. And so that's the part that I'm enjoying, that and, the effort that some of the guys are making to try to get out of their comfort zone and play within that system.
I think there was a big shock right off the bat, Bill. Who knew Greg Garza could line up at center back?
Yeah, he's definitely got the height for it, or maybe not. He's not a typical 6'4", 6'3" center back. But when I saw it, it surprised me. But at the same time, it was kind of like this kind of makes some sense, right? I mean, Waston's a left-footed, center back. So we had a left-footed center back. We had a right-footed center back, and we lost Waston, and we could have put Hoyt in there. That would have made some sense, especially with Duplan back, which was a concern, was whether or not Duplan would be back. But instead of having a right-footed player there, we put in maybe a little bit more pacey, younger left-footed player, and he definitely has some of the. Maybe not obviously not as much experience as Justin Hoyt has, but he is not an inexperienced player for sure. He has some veteran qualities to him with his national team experience. So when I thought about it, I thought, well, yeah, what a better person to put right behind Gutman to maybe help him, learn a few things and fit into that role a little better.
What'd you make of it, Coach?
I agree with Bill entirely. The first thing I thought was that connection with Gutman, and I thought, I hope those two are talking the whole game, and Garza's telling Andrew what he's seeing out there and what he would like Andrew, when he should go forward more, when he should be checking in, where he wants him on the touchline to make those passes. I think that connection, not as going forward those positions, but just that veteran presence. One of my favorite things to do as a coach was when my kids were scrimmaging, was to go out and line up as a second left back next to my left back or something, and basically run the line with her and tell her what I would like to see and what I would be doing and what I would be saying. And basically that's what Gutman had. He had kind of coached there. On top of that, I mean, we've seen the Hoyt experiment, I have nothing against Justin Hoyt. I think he has some great qualities, but I mean, it hasn't worked. We've seen him at center back. We've seen him at right back. And for all his qualities that he does have, he's maybe a bit beyond it in terms of the speed of the play. And, that's okay. He does a lot of things well, too. And he might even be good for a spot start here or there. But I was happy to see something different, quite frankly.
It was kind of refreshing to see that starting lineup thrown out there and to see all the differences, right? And I know, again, Jans was kind of handicapped this weekend as far as who he could pick with everybody out due to injury or international duty. But was there anything that you saw from Greg Garza playing left center back in this formation that led to a Toronto goal? Was there anything that specific spot you saw that led to problems for the FC Cincinnati backline, or was it elsewhere?
Yeah, I do think it was not a super solid spot. I don't think Garza made any terrible plays, but his lack of size and strength showed a couple times when Mullins was able to kind of shrug off a challenge and Garza could only poke the ball back into another Toronto player. And we also saw a couple times Garza got caught a little bit higher than Haglund when he probably should have been deeper, just little things like that. But that said, in all of those points, it wasn't like what Garza did led directly to the goal. It's just maybe if Waston was back there, he could have prevented the goal based on other mistakes that happened as well. So all said and done, I think Garza could be proud of his performance playing out of position, and I don't think that is what cost us any of the 5 goals in and of itself.
I was going through the this year's schedule, and I was trying to add it up, Bill, and this was the 7th time this season that FC Cincinnati conceded 4 or more goals in a match. It's just funny to say because that was like the mantra heading into the season, right? We're not going to concede. Ooh, were they wrong?
Yeah, we definitely thought we were building a strong defense, and between international call-ups and a lot of injuries and various other things, that has definitely not been the case. And then even when we're healthy, we've not looked like we were, all playing in the same plan. I mean, there's definitely some disconnects in the back line that's causing some mistakes, some individual mistakes, as well as some collective mistakes. And, I think it's a bad stat, obviously, and we don't like to hear that. But, I kind of get the feeling at this point, and I think, Ron Jans actually addressed this a little bit with the media during training. And he just said, at this point, we just got to figure out a way to get spirits up. we got to get the team motivated. And I think that's what it's coming down to at this point. It as fans, for a lot of people, they would say this is a miserable experience going to these games, right? We're just seeing our team getting crushed over and over again. Whether you agree with that or not, I don't want to get into it, but obviously there are people that feel that way. For the players, it's the same thing, right? Nobody wants to go out. I mean, you've all, maybe you all have kids. I have a kid, who's played in teams, and there's been years where his team is just not good, right? And you go out, and every game, it's going to be bad, and it's so demoralizing to watch, and it's so demoralizing to that child. Well, these aren't children; these are professionals, but they still are human beings like we are, and to go out day in, day out and get stepped on and crushed, like if you go to your job and basically your boss yelled at you every day, it wouldn't be a very fun experience, right? You'd feel like you weren't doing anything right. We got to do something. And I feel like when this team gives up, 2 goals, the game's over. There just isn't that mental strength and fortitude that they need to come back. And I'm not really even casting blame at this point. I mean, it's a collective situation where we've come in this season. We're gonna have a really bad goal differential at the end of the year because we just tend to give up goals once we start.
You said 2 goals. I think that number's high. I think after 1 goal, the head's hanging.
Yeah, I'm trying to give the benefit of the doubt there, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. I mean, it feels like once we're scored against, the game's over.
Yeah.
And credit to him that we came back and did get a goal and we didn't get shut out. We actually haven't been shut out very often. We get a single goal quite often. There's been a penalty kick quite often in the last few games, but we are at least keeping ourselves on the sheet, so to speak.
True point.
So
yeah, and we also see, another thing that is indicative of that is we haven't picked up points from any losing positions. Like I think was the last time that we picked up points when we were behind was the 1-1 draw in Atlanta. If I'm not wrong. Yeah. I mean, so the fact that you never come back to tie or win a game, or extremely rarely, I think shows some of that lack of spirit. And I think if you go back and watch the replays of that second goal, as the ball came in and you just look at right before the shot's going in on net, you can just see the players assuming it's going to go in. And it's just, I mean, it's hard to watch, but like Bill said, we do have to remember that these guys are people too, and it doesn't excuse them from not doing their job or not putting forth effort. But I don't think that that's really the issue here. I think it's just an issue of being demoralized. And the reason why workplace wellness exists in the world and our jobs is because people know that if you go into work demoralized every day, you're not going to do good work. So it's going to be hard to get things moving in the right direction, but we've got to find something positive if we want that to happen.
Well, speaking of something positive, the return of Frankie Amaya, right? He was back in the lineup after quite a lengthy stint away due to injury. What did you make, Bill? Did he play well out there?
Yeah. I mean, we were talking about this actually a little offline just before as well. And, Frankie's an interesting player. Obviously, the fans love him. He works really hard. He put in 70 minutes, I think. And he was just exhausted at the end of it. We pushed him as hard as we could coming back, but he's not somebody that when you look at the stats, you think, oh, this is a phenomenal player. I mean, he hasn't scored a goal. He hasn't made an assist. His passing accuracy is typically below the team, but he is everywhere. And he is always, trying to take the ball, and he is always trying to be part of every play. He connects plays. He makes things happen. And I think, we saw a lot of that pretty much right off the bat coming right back. I didn't feel like he missed that much of a step. He might not have been, 100%, but he was certainly 95 in my opinion. It was great to see him. And, for me, unfortunately, I think, and again, I'm not, criticizing McCabe, but, we had McCabe in there with him as a young guy. We had Stanko in there. I don't think that's our best 3 midfielders, right? To me, you bring Alan Cruz back in, who obviously fits into that role very clearly these days. And for me personally, I'd like to see Bertoni, but I think if you get a little stronger group around him, I think you'll get a little bit more out of Frankie than we saw for this game. But
yeah,
still.
I think especially with Amaya, watch the way how often the first guy that approaches him, he slides past. And I don't mean that he beats him and is dribbling by him, but I mean he gets the ball beyond that first defender so often. He doesn't pass sideways and backwards a ton, but often like it's a little flick off the chest or just the way he uses his first touch to create a bit of space. I just think that he has those tools to break lines all by himself. And if he can start maybe just picking out a pass, just a little bit better pass, a little bit more key pass, and obviously having the players around him, then when he gets him the ball can actually do something. I think that he has those tools, and that's why he looks so good in the eye test, is those little things that he's doing over and over. He just looks good on the ball, and I'm excited about the kid's future, to be honest.
Yeah, 100%.
The stat of the night for me, though, folks, and this is interesting, in a match where FC Cincinnati conceded 5 goals, TT had 0 saves. That means a lot of shots on target hitting the back of the net and a lot of shots not hitting the target at all for Toronto. I don't know. I found that interesting, Bill.
Yeah, it certainly doesn't sound good. I don't know that we can really place the blame on this on TD. I don't think those 5 goals are things that you would expect most keepers to save. I mean, you put the best keeper in the league up there. Maybe he has a phenomenal night and he stops 2 of them. But I think you're still losing the game 3-1.
Yeah.
And there was some, obviously they didn't only take 5 shots. They took more than that. And his defense did come up, and, Garza, made several blocks, and Hagelin made a couple blocks. I mean, there was definitely some defenders getting in the way of some of these shots as well. So it's not like they, only took 5 shots and all 5 went in, but still, I mean, I think we had this discussion. Well, it was probably right before Richie got hurt. I don't remember exactly when it was, but people were getting frustrated and saying, where's TD and why is Richie playing? He's giving up 5 goals every game. I don't know exactly what they were saying, but you know what I'm saying.
Oh yeah.
And we discussed this on the show, and it was like, is this Richie's fault? Should we have a better keeper? And I mean, some people were saying, well, just to be fair, he's standing in the goal, and there's a lot going past him. Well, I think we've kind of proven it wasn't Richie at this point, right? It's not Richie wasn't doing anything wrong. And I'm not saying TD's doing anything wrong. I think we just have an issue where the defense breaks down, and goalkeepers just the nature of the beast. And I guess you were a keeper, if I understand correctly. So you understand this.
I played a little bit of keeper. Yeah.
Yeah. You're not going to save every ball, right? Once it gets to you, if you could make 2-3 saves a game, you're potentially keeping your team in the mix. You're not supposed to save everyone.
If you were shooting at me, there was many that I didn't save. So
exactly. if it's one-on-one, if you're to that point, just like a penalty kick, there's not very many times the keeper saves it.
Yeah. Bill brings up a good point though, Coach. I mean, this debate 2 months ago, or however many months ago it was, about Richie being the goalkeeper and that they should switch. I think it's pretty clear now, after the run of games that TT has had, that it was not on Richie. It's got to get by 10 guys before it gets to the keeper.
Yeah, absolutely. Tim Howard in his prime in the Belgian game was not keeping some of those shots out. I mean, the thing about it is, I go back in the How They Happened articles, which you can find on the website there, and break down each goal. And when I do that, I watch the replay, between 10 and 50 times, and watch each player throughout the entire replay and start fashion and decide what they could have done differently, or should they have done anything differently. And none of the shots were savable in my estimation. I mean, maybe savable is a stretch. Maybe they're savable, but very low percentage. The 2 things I saw is on the free header from Delgado. I think TT probably could have closed down. Delgado was so wide open. TT probably could have come off his line. Probably still wasn't going to make the save. And then the only other thing that I saw was the volley that De Leon had off the corner kick. Maybe he could have moved his positioning a bit to be able to see the ball. Clearly, he couldn't see the ball coming through all that traffic. But again, these are all like, could it have happened? Possibly. None of those goals were something that I said, yeah, he should have done better. And same with most of the goals that Richie scored. Very rarely are teams getting goals against FCC that we're thinking like, man, that should not have gone in, which I guess can be comforting in some ways. But at the same time, they're either hitting wonder shots like Altidore did in the first meeting, or the volley that DeLeon had, which is a really good strike, or there's just the defensive breakdowns are so massive. You have players waltzing through on goal with nothing but seeing the whites of Teton's eyes and nothing but the back of the net to hit.
Oh, there was a time where I wanted Nick DeLeon to be an FC Cincinnati player, but it just was not meant to be. Anyway, Bill mentioned earlier that FC Cincinnati doing a really good job of actually staying on the sheet, right? They've at least scored a goal in 12 consecutive matches. So they have not, been kept scoreless all too often of late. But again, there's the silver lining of you can score, but the other team's typically outscoring them. So that's been the unfortunate part. But also, fun little stat from this weekend is that FC Cincinnati was the first team in Major League Soccer this season to start 3 MLS Super Draft picks, Brad.
Yeah.
It's crazy to think that that's where we're at.
It really is, especially because we have to remember that the Super Draft in the MLS is not like the NFL draft. You're not drafting these guys expecting to start really any of them outside maybe your number one pick. These are developmental players that you're bringing into the system. Most of them are going to get loaned out, maybe be a squad player for a few years, low salary cap hit players. So to have to start 3 in a match, or to get to start 3 in a match, depending on how you're looking at it, means that we're struggling for players. That said, at this point in the season, it's like September call-ups in baseball. It's like you got to have something to watch. And I was out there watching McCabe. I was interested to see how McCabe and Daly and Amaya could look together, because in 5 years, that could be 3 of our players that are out there as key players. I sort of hope not based on current evidence, but it could happen.
I think for sure, when you're talking about, this, obviously there was a lot of players that were being called up, right?
Sure.
And we understand that we were short on players, but there were some other choices that could have been made, and we could have started Maddox instead of Daly, right? And obviously, we put Alashe in for Amaya. We could have started him instead of McCabe. So, there were other options. And I think what it comes down to is it's a sign that, at this point, we're already starting to look towards next year, right? These are young players on our squad. Let's get them out there, get some time. They're either going to make it or break, and they're going to get better for it. And we'll find out pretty quick whether they ultimately look like they're going to have a chance to progress and get good enough to play at this level.
Rupesh in the chat room was questioning the goal streak by FC Cincinnati and was wondering how many of those are penalty kicks. Well, quite a bit. And one of those guys who continues to score penalty kicks is Manu Ledesma. Once again, scores from the spot. Of course, everybody by this time probably knows that his father passed away last week. And so Manu getting a goal in tribute to his father, I guess, is a bright spot, Bill, in what has been a pretty rough year.
Yeah, it was a very heartwarming, touching story. It was kind of interesting to hear. I had caught on social media from Ledesma that his father had passed away. I was actually a little concerned he might not be at the game. Apparently, he missed the funeral. It's not trivial just to hop on a plane and go to Argentina. So I get it, but it's kind of sad. But at the same time, it seems like that meant a lot to him. So, in his theory, it was the first time his father saw him play. So,
yeah, that's tough to think about. Not an easy situation to be in, and of course, our thoughts and prayers are with the Ledesma family, of course. In the end, FC Cincinnati again, they fall 5-1. Brad, make me feel better, please. What?
Yeah.
There's only a handful of games left in the year, but it's just try. Just can you do something to spin this?
Yeah, I think I don't think I can make anybody feel better, but I can give people things to look for that are not going to make them miserable, right? What we need to start looking at is, what does Jans want to do? Because Jans is going to be here through next year, by all accounts, and I don't think they're moving on for him. He's a Nijkamp guy. I think he's at least here through next year. What does he want to do? And clearly that's the style that Nijkamp wants to build going forward. And we start to look at, some of the phases of play. What do they want to do in possession? What they want to do is they want to build from the back. They want to push the outside backs way high, and they want to play a lot through the width, right? then what they want to do is they want to look if they can isolate the weak side player. So what you're looking to is to maybe drop it to your number 6 and have them play the winger cutting in from the left or from the right and see if you can hit somebody in that seam. That's what they want to do in possession. Defensively, they're packing the middle. They're playing a high line. They're trying to really force teams to play to the outside. And then you starting to look at the transition to defense and the transition to attack. And you start to see what they're trying to do. And then you realize, quite frankly, we don't have the players to do those things. So we're going to get scored on. We talked about building the team to be a defensive team. Well, quality and quantity are two different things. Sure, we bought a boatload of defenders, right? We brought in how many center backs and how many defensive midfielders, but none of them are the complete product. And we're not expecting any of them to be. So we start to see how many fit with what we're trying to do. Well, if you want to push your outside backs high, you need to have center mids that don't turn the ball over easily, because what happens is you have Gutman and Deplan charging up the field. You have Stanko slam the ball off of an opponent's shins, and everybody's in behind us because, that's what happens. So, you start to look at some of these pieces and it can be aggravating. It can be frustrating, and it's okay as a fan. And, the coaches and the players, they're frustrated too, but start to recognize, they're still trying to do certain things. And personally, I would rather throw out players, try to play the way we want to play and see them fail over and over than to try to play really conservative and see if we can eke out some results. And, it's probably a really bad parallel to make because we're not feeling good on that side either. But the U.S. men's national team is going through the same thing with Berhalter, right? He's trying to push in a system. He's using players that don't necessarily totally fit into that system. And he's trying to instill an idea of the way that the U.S. men's national team are going to play. And then as the players come through with that idea in mind, they should be ready-made to jump on. And hopefully by 2022, they're ready to go. For FCC, hopefully it's a little bit of an earlier process because we can kind of go out and hand select players a little bit better. But that's what I'm looking for. And to me, there are some positives. I think Amaya is a positive. I think Gutman has been a positive. When Garza's played on the outside, he's been a positive. I think there's some good things. I really liked what Mane was doing, dropping in between the lines as a forward. That's part of what Jans wants. And, Maddox, that's how the Ledesma, the foul on Joe Zhao that led to Ledesma's free kick that led to his penalty was because Maddox pulled off that center back, received the ball in between the lines, and then played a winger streaking in behind. And those are the little moments I'm like, yes, that's it. That's what he's trying to do. And I just want to see more of it. And I think we're going to. And that's all I have to say.
Man,
feel good about that, Subs.
Yeah, coach was ready tonight, Bill.
He was prepared. He had his notes.
He definitely was prepared. I want to go on a little bit of a rant now and get on my soapbox here. So I've been watching MLS from afar for a few years now. Obviously up close and personal this year one in Major League Soccer for the Orange and Blue. But for the longest time, I would hear soccer podcasters and radio hosts whine and complain about the international break and why Major League Soccer continues to play matches through it. And I just thought it was, I didn't think too much of it at the time. I just thought it was a lot of whining to whine. But now, after experiencing it this weekend and seeing what FC Cincinnati had to go through with this international break, I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous that Major League Soccer continues to play games through these international breaks. All the other leagues around the world halt their leagues so that players can go and play for their country. Why in the world is this still happening in Major League Soccer here in 2019? Haven't we evolved as a soccer nation to know that these players need to go elsewhere? And when you take away some of these players from these squads, it's not good soccer. Like, what? I don't understand this, Bill. Please explain it to me. Why does the league continue to do this?
Yeah, I don't have a good answer, to be honest.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, I do know that, I spoke to somebody with the front office in the past, and basically, they kind of said that they were given a choice by MLS as to whether they wanted to break or play through some of these international breaks, and they chose to play through them. So at some level, it's on FCC, but why are they even being given the choice, right?
It shouldn't even be given the choice.
And I understand that we're dealing with a different weather system. I understand that we're dealing with, a different season basically than like you see in Europe, for instance, right? And it obviously causes some problems, but I mean, we found a way to take a 2 or 3 week break one year for the World Cup. It seems to me like, we should be able to take a week off here, a week off there in our schedule. I mean, it probably means a couple more midweek games, you know, or we shorten the season a little bit, in some way, like have a shorter playoff or whatever, but which I think we've already done. But I think it's just smarter. It's better. I mean, we're selling a product on the pitch. I mean, FCC's, not doing well this season. So, it doesn't really matter at that level, but let's take away where we are today and talk about you're going to a game for entertainment. And let's assume that we have a team that's pretty decent. You're going to be entertained. And when you pull out the not four best players, but maybe four really good players from the team, you change the dynamic of that team. You change the entertainment value. You change the quality of that team. It seems like kind of a silly thing to do. So.
And I think the worst part about it is the lack of fairness involved, because it's more than just, do we hit break or do we not? Do we send our players on international duty or do we request that they stay home? There's a lot of interpersonal things going on. Toronto is in the midst of playoff hunt. So they go to U.S. Soccer and say, hey, we really want to keep Omar Gonzalez, Michael Bradley, and Josie Altidore. Now, Josie didn't feature, but he was available if the game was tight, right? And maybe those three players, they're veterans. They know they have a place in the squad. They're okay with that. They're pushing for a playoff berth with their clubs. They're okay with that. Can you imagine if Ron Jans went to Alan Cruz or Kendall Waston and said, hey guys, we don't want to get embarrassed at home. So we want you to skip your international game and we want you to come and stay here and play. That they could have demanded that probably. But that's not going to do any favors for Alan Cruz and Kendall Waston and Powell and everyone else. They're not going to be happy with that. And then players are going to see that and not going to want to come to play for FCC, seeing how they treat that international situation. So it creates a complete lack of fairness where just depending on who you have on your team and what kind of situation you're in, you can or can't request for those players to stay. When you take a break, you put everybody on an even playing field.
Absolutely. And I know the schedules are tight. I know, these rules were put in place years ago when a lot of stadiums weren't in place, right? A lot of these teams were playing in, other NFL venues or playing in other venues that weren't theirs. But a majority of the league now has their own facility, right? It's a different league now. There's no reason why these games should be being played during international breaks. That's just my 2 cents. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Make sure you email us at feedback@CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com. All right, it's that time of the show where we give a big shout out and thanks to our tremendous supporters. Let's give it up to King's Hammer and Tim Bronsel, Matt Adamchick, Brian Malone, Jamie Smed, Jonas Tom, Jack Emery, Mike Bowman, Kathleen Francis, Teresa Everidge, Matt Imholt, Matthew Long, Joe Coling, and Tara Mullins. These are some of our finest supporters here at Cincinnati Soccer Talk. To learn more on how you can support CST, head on over to CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com/support. All right, before we get going and moving on and talking a little bit about the FC Cincinnati Academy, we recently had our Cincinnati Soccer Talk foot golf event back on the 24th of August, and we are really pleased to announce today we do this event every year for Sports Games for Kids. It's a great organization that Tom Grabo puts together, and we really have a great time raising money for his cause. We are really thrilled to announce this year that we were able to raise, drumroll please, $2,132.77 for Sports Games for Kids. So thank you so much for all the golfers who showed up, everybody who participated in the raffle events. And of course, this event would not have been possible without the help of our sponsors, Buffalo Wings and Rings, the Dutch Lions, Cincinnati Dutch Lions, 30 Drink, the House of Orange, Rhinehouse, 513shirts.com, and of course, our main sponsor who does a tremendous job each and every year is Joseph Toyota. So thank you very much for that. We really do appreciate that. And of course, I had to give a big shout out to Brad Weigel, who puts this event on for us every year. He works tirelessly to make sure this is a big event. And Brad, thank you so much for all you do for that. So again, that's pretty cool, Bill. I mean, another $2,000 raised for Sports Games for Kids. And again, that's a great cause.
Yeah, and it's a blast. I mean, if you ever make it out to one of our, foot golf events, you'll have a great time. I haven't actually played, but I've, wandered around the course and watched people play and taken pictures in the past. So,
Yeah, you film me looking ridiculous.
well, that was the whole goal. No, it was actually kind of a poor coincidence. The only time that I actually crossed you was the one time you shanked the ball into the woods. But whatever, it's always fun. So
That weekend was rough, right? I remember
yeah,
that weekend. We got I can't remember which course it was. It wasn't Woodland. It was the first year, and we
yeah, it was
got
down by
about
Lunkin.
we got about as far away from the clubhouse as possible when an absolute deluge comes down, and that stunk. So, especially when I had driven down from Toledo, didn't have a change of clothes. Um, yeah, that was rough, but no, it's a good time, and we're really thrilled that we're able to help raise money for sports games for kids. Tom does a great job with that foundation, so thank you to everybody who participated and contributed. It really does mean a lot to us. So thank you again. All right, let's talk a little positive, right? Let's turn the tables and look to the future, shall we? We're going to talk a little bit now about the FC Cincinnati Academy, and we can actually talk about matches being played by these youngsters. Brad, this is exciting stuff for FC Cincinnati fans because this is the future of the club, right? I mean, this is where we could see that potential, whether they end up playing for FC Cincinnati or maybe the club develops this talent to sell on elsewhere. But this is a big deal for the club.
Yeah, an academy in the MLS is absolutely key because exactly what you said. If you're not bringing through players that you're going to develop and play, like FC Dallas has been able to do really well, then you're bringing players that are moving on that you're cashing in on, and you have a few players come through, get a few first team minutes, and move on to other things, and then all of a sudden you have that happen a few times. You're able to turn that into an MLS veteran or another key piece. And quite frankly, it gives the entire city, it gives kids something to look at and hope for and to move towards. And with the amount of soccer we have being played in the Queen City here, good soccer at all levels, I'm excited that this academy is off and running. And I can't wait until the first time we get to have an academy product suit up for the first team. It's going to be a great day.
So the U16 and U17 squad, they won 3-0 over the Minnesota United Academy. Goals from William Bensick and Akini James, and then, of course, a Minnesota United own goal late in the match. So they win 3-0. And then the under-15s, Bill, unfortunately, they fell 1-0 after conceding a goal in the 9th minute. But again, they made the trip up to Minnesota. And again, as I just mentioned with Brad, this is a good first weekend, good first showing for the Orange and Blue Academy.
Oh, absolutely. And 1-0 loss is certainly a score line we'd love to see with the first team. So
Right.
I mean, can't complain about that. You held them to one goal and they held you to none. That's not too bad. And they're not going to win everyone. These are kids as well. And even the better team often with the younger kids isn't the winner because of, silly mistakes and other things. But no, I think the key is that it's begun. It's happening. We have staff in place. We have coaches. There's a website out there. You can go and see their schedule. It doesn't look like you'll be able to probably watch any games at home this year because the Mercy Health Training Center isn't going to be available yet for public. But eventually you'll be able to actually go and watch some games here at home when the academy plays, which will be a great time. But I think the trick is what does this mean to the club, right? I mean, so we have an academy. I mean, what is that, right? And people maybe don't understand, but for me, right, I had a son go through King's Hammer. It was a great experience for him, I hope. But as a parent, right, it's expensive, right? I mean, you're spending, I'll give rough numbers because I don't know what every club charges, and even within clubs there's ranges, but you might be spending $1,500 every season, right, to be part of that club.
That's just for the club.
Just for the club. Every couple of years, maybe another $400 or $500 for uniform, and then depending on what level you're playing at, you're going to travel, right? So most of these teams aren't going to travel coast to coast because we're kind of more regional, but you might have a few, maybe 2 tournaments, maybe 3 tournaments, depending on how good your team is, where you have to travel, hotels, food, gasoline, airfare in some cases. It depends on what your choices are. There's cost involved in all of that, a lot of cost. This is fully funded by FCC, right? And every team that's in the development academy is a requirement that's fully funded. So all of that uniform is paid for, all the training is paid for, all of the travel cost is paid for. You know, if they have to travel to training, because Brad mentioned, you know, how this can give kids within the Queen City, you know, a chance to look for something to do. This is going to be beyond Cincinnati, right? I mean, we're going to pull kids from Lexington, we're going to pull kids from Louisville, we're going to pull kids from beyond Cincinnati because of this, right? If you're good enough and you're willing to travel for the training, because that's not paid for, but if you're willing to travel for the training, you know, it'll be fully funded by the club. And okay, so now the club puts a bunch of money out, but what's the value in that, right? And it comes down to, you basically are training kids in the style of play you want, right? Because Niekamp is basically setting his style, and it's going to be for the academy and the first team. So everybody's going to learn the same styles, which means we can start to promote people up. And we have rights to those players, right? We paid for all of their training. We paid for them to be on our academy. So another team can't just suck this player away and get this great player that we spent all this time and money on. So for instance, when we brought Gutman on board,
Yep.
right, he's a homegrown player with Chicago Fire. So we had to pay Chicago Fire for his homegrown rights, right? So they made money. They invested in him, and they get some of that back from us so that we could have Gutman on our roster. And it works that way for everybody. And they have like the super draft, right? When we know all these college kids that we picked up, Frankie Amaya, you can't pick up a homegrown player if another team has their rights. So during the super draft, it kind of was, you know, probably overlooked by most people, but there was another player,
Portland, Benji Michelle.
He was one. Yep. But the one I was actually thinking about, because I knew about him, but I can't think of his name now. He actually played for Indiana. So he had a great Buckmaster, I think. Had a great name. I loved his name. Anyway, he played for Indiana, and another Chicago Fire product, right? So he was not available for teams to draft except for Chicago Fire. They traded him as, you know, to get a better draft pick somewhere else, and some other team picked him up. But so, you know, weird little things like that go on, but it gives you that protection. And then these homegrown players, you know, you get a lot of protection with them on your roster. You can actually put them into supplemental spots. They don't count against your caps. There's a lot of things that they really help you as far as when you're trying to build this roster, and we're limited within MLS with a bunch of weird rules about roster caps and everything. The homegrown players kind of can fit outside of that to a degree. You can put them into your supplemental roster where they don't count against your caps. You can pay them more than a normal player would get in that supplemental roster, etc. So there's a lot of nice stuff about this, and we're basically building a team with players who already know how we want them to play. We can transition them to, you know, second team, first team, and ultimately, hopefully, have, you know, I mean, it's not going to be every kid, but, you know, maybe one gem every couple of years, you know.
Yeah, you never know. You might, you know, maybe FC Cincinnati grooms the next Alphonso Davies, who ends up going to Bayern Munich. You know, he was with the Vancouver Whitecaps academy system and got a good run there with the Major League Soccer side too. So you never know.
Nope.
But the fact that the academy is in place now is exciting, and I love the fact that you should be able to, at some point, once the Mercy Health Training Center is complete, should be able to go down there and watch those matches, and that's exciting stuff as well. So, of course, we'll be keeping a close eye on the FC Cincinnati Academy over at CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com. So make sure you check back for more and more updates as these matches go on with the academy side. So congrats to those youngsters getting their first action in the orange and blue, and we'll see where it takes them going forward. All right, we'll wrap things up here this week with last week's town hall event. FC Cincinnati hosted a town hall. Jeff Birding, Gerard Niekamp, and Ron Jans were there to take questions from FC Cincinnati fans. It was also live streamed online, so for those of you who couldn't attend it, did have the ability to watch it when it was working, right? I made the joke on social media that they must have had my internet service provider that night. So it was a little choppy here and there, but for the most part, it was viewable. Now, Bill, I'll start with you, since you're kind of our, I don't know what you want to call it. I feel like you're like the club, I don't know, maybe not insider, but you're kind of there. You go to these events.
I was there.
What did you make of the town hall? What were some of the highlights?
I think just starting with a summary right off top, right? I think first off, nobody asked any really crazy questions. There was no, tough questions, angry people, nothing weird happened, right? It was pretty safe questions, pretty safe answers. I don't think we would have expected anybody to ask a crazy question and get a meaningful, deep answer anyway, right? So what's important is that Jeff, Gerard, Ron sat on a couch in front of all of their fans and talked about what was going on, admitted to mistakes, and were willing to take questions. I think that's in itself huge. It doesn't mean that we got a lot out of it. There wasn't any revelations that occurred, but the fact that they're willing to do that they're not just kind of up in an ivory tower saying, well, this year didn't go so well, but we got all the ticket money, so let's get the ticket money next year and see what happens. I mean, there are clubs that feel that way, right? That you don't feel like the club is connected to the fans. I do feel that this club is trying to stay connected to the fans, and this is another one of these things that is important. So good for them. So at that, beyond that, I think obviously the big thing is why do we suck this year? I mean, just to be blunt about it, but why aren't we good? And I think Jeff Birding obviously took most of that on himself. He's obviously not trying to blame Gerard, who came in midseason. He's obviously not trying to blame Ron, who just showed up. And honestly, he didn't try to blame any of his past coaches, right? He didn't put the blame anywhere. He took it on himself. And he just said he screwed up, right? He should have had a GM in place. Knowing what he knows now, that was the biggest mistake he made. Was he didn't make that effort. He just, had talked to a lot of other clubs, and they kind of said, you need to focus on the stadium. You only get one chance to make this right. Don't screw up your stadium. He put all of his thought into that. And I think he maybe delegated too much, maybe didn't have enough oversight to know what was going on. And it didn't happen. Right. So good enough that he took the blame. And, I guess at this point, it doesn't matter, right. It is what it is. But, good for the leader to say, this is on me. I should have hired a GM sooner.
Yeah.
So,
Coach, I don't think you had a chance to go there, but did you at least get a chance to catch some of the highlights or watch it?
Yeah, I did. And, I think I'm with Bill. And I think the biggest thing for me is exactly that. Admit that it wasn't done right and promise to do better. I mean, we'll have to wait and see if they live up to those promises. Of course, they're not going to come out and outline a 35-point plan of the players they're going to go out and get and how they're going to change things so that we don't get crushed anymore. And there's going to be ups and downs as we move towards stability. But coming out and saying, like, this was not done as well as we wanted, and I'm sorry, and I promise we're going to do better. I mean, think of the other sports teams that we would love to hear that from instead of just the endless line of excuses. Even FC Cincinnati, we've heard from time to time throughout the excuses of the short run up and things like that, which are somewhat legitimate, but just to stand up and be accountable and say, we're not happy either, and we're going to make it right. That's exactly what I wanted from that process.
And they certainly did mention the short run up a few times. So, they didn't leave that out. They did give their excuses as well, but it is important to accept blame, I think.
I was watching it early on, Bill, and Jeff said the words, we're never going to have a year like this again. And I kind of cringed, like, oh,
yeah. I hate, such a politician, right?
Yeah.
I hate absolutes. I hate promises like that, but again, I kind of feel like sometimes, we oversold this year, right? We probably should have been much more cautious about what we promised fans was going to happen this year. We got into the MLS, and I don't know if everybody just got excited or what, but where I thought we were going to be pretty conservative about our expectations this year, all of a sudden they're like, we're going for it. And I was like, oh my gosh, why did you just say that? And I certainly thought we were going to have a better year than this, but I did not expect us to be going for it. Going for it to me is, we got 3 loaded DPs, and, we're pushing the bounds of our capabilities. His roster, is packed to the gills, and no, we didn't do that. So anyway, but no, I think, coming back around to the town hall, and we don't want to go point by point for this because some people watched it and it'd be boring. But I think fans asked some good questions. They were pretty safe questions in the sense that they didn't really go after the club, insisting on some sort of evidence that the future would be better, because obviously they weren't going to get it anyway. But I think there was some good tidbits. It was impressive. The club actually had some answers for very unrelated to the season type of things. People asked about a USL team. People asked about NWSL. People asked about the academy, and they were prepared to talk about all of that. And they talked about next year probably seeing a reserve team, probably USL. Undecided at this point what it is, whether it's a League One or it's a championship with some sort of a relationship with another team. They're exploring that still, but it sounded like that was coming. And Ron had a little pyramid. I don't know whether you guys could see online the slides that they put up there, but he had a little pyramid where he talked about the academy being the base and the reserve team being kind of the middle, and then of course the first team being on top, and how players can't easily transition from the bottom to the top, and they need something in the middle. And so there's definitely a thought going on there. And I think, from an NWSL standpoint, they reiterated their dedication to having that at some point, but it's not going to happen until we have a new stadium. Obviously, there's only so much this club can do, and B, from just an economy standpoint, they need a place to play, and why negotiate a 1-year contract with Nippert for women's soccer as well. So, I think it's just something, probably USL, and then shortly thereafter we'll see the NWSL, but it seems to be, still on their target. So
one of the things too, Coach, that I never really thought of being important was having that reserve team, so that when guys who are coming back from injury can get some minutes against maybe somebody other than what you're seeing at practice. That kind of gets off I guess that's really been overlooked this year, especially considering all the injuries that they've been having. That would have been a really good tool to have for guys like Amaya, who's coming back from an injury, Garza as well, to getting back to match fitness a little bit quicker.
Yeah, and let's not forget the players that we've had to loan out and recall, over and over. That would be a stopping point for them, where it's like they're not going to get first team minutes right now. How long did Lasso stick on the roster not getting first team minutes? He wasn't developing at that point. And maybe he would have been alone as opposed to, going down to a reserve squad. But those are the sorts of things, the recovery from injury. I mean, you just cannot replicate a real match against other real professionals that actually really want to beat you and really want to make a statement, especially if you're, an MLS quality player coming down to play in USL. So you can't replicate that sort of pressure. And I think it's going to be huge. And, these are this kinds of things, that, we talked about the short run up before, and about how that's kind of an excuse, but a legitimate one. And, most teams come into this league with a lot of these pieces in place. If not a reserve squad, they have an academy in place already. Orlando City, when their first year in the MLS, they already had 2 homegrown players signed to their team, I think, maybe even 3, because they already had some of these pieces in place. So this short run up, not having a reserve squad, not having a real relationship with the USL squad, not having an academy, these are all pieces we're trying to kind of build the plane as we're flying it. So the fact that we're in some bumpy airways is not that surprising, really.
Yeah.
And this is something, I don't think this is something we plan to talk about, but it kind of strikes me a little bit. Sometimes people say, why didn't we wait? And, why did we, jump early, right? Getting into getting into MLS early. Right? What's the point? We could have stayed another year. We could have stayed 2 years in the USL, got all this stuff organized, come in strong. But I guess for me, if I really think about it, the fact that we got in MLS at all is kind of amazing, right? I mean, we had this great fan base. We demanded attention. We demanded entrance into MLS, and we got there. I wonder, and we'll never know, but how big of that window, was there? I mean, could we have waited 2 years, right? I mean, when they come knocking, they say, "Do you want to come in next year?" If you say, "Nah, give us a couple years." I mean, do they come back? We know of teams like, Rochester Rhinos, right? Who kind of missed their window and never, ever made it into MLS. and died. Right. So, I think, with Miami and Nashville coming in next year, obviously MLS did not want 3 teams to come in the same year. It's going to be bad enough, trying to do the expansion draft with 2 teams sucking players at the same time. But to have 3 teams would be crazy. So they obviously saw in us an opportunity to get a team in earlier. We had Nippert Stadium, which is maybe not everything they wanted, but was good enough, and could be made MLS ready. So, I think for people who sit around and worry a little bit about the season and such, why do we have a short window coming into this? Because we got in, right? You take the opportunities when they come to you. No, this year did not go as planned, but if we waited another year, maybe we weren't even on the table. Maybe we never get an MLS.
Yeah, that's a good point, Bill. And I've said this quite a bit. I'd much rather be losing MLS games than winning USL games personally. If we were in USL this year, we wouldn't have seen Wayne Rooney come to town, right? We wouldn't have seen Zlatan Ibrahimovic come to town, which is exciting. And I know that's not why we're buying tickets, but I don't know. I'd much rather be in this league than USL personally.
Plus, having a chance to build the squad while you're already in MLS gives you the chance to now go into next season already taking some of your lumps. So maybe our first season was a lot worse than our first season would have been a year or 2 years from now. But our first season was never going to be great. We were never going to be Atlanta or LAFC. Nope. So now we've gotten that first season out of the way. I guess not all the way out of the way yet, but we're taking some of those lumps, and that allows us now to start to evaluate like what kind of players we want to bring in and who around the squad is going to be in for the long haul, and start to figure some of these things out. That if we would have waited, sure, we would have had a better run up, and probably our first season would not have been historically bad. But at the same point, we're going to have a first season sometime, and it was never going to be pretty. We were never going to be competing for the playoffs, in my opinion.
Yep. Well, I think Bill and I both thought maybe they could have, but we had our orange and blue blinders on. What can we say?
There was a time. There was a time.
Back all the way in March, believe it or not, when things were going well. But no, I'm glad that the brass took the time to sit in front of the fans and really just kind of own it, right? I don't think I've ever seen the Bengals management do anything remotely close to that, nor the Reds. So it's quite refreshing to see the front office get in front of the fans and allow you the chance to ask questions and feel like you're invested in this club. So that makes it unique. That's what makes this club more special than any of the professional franchises in this city. So. Kudos to the front office for doing that. All right, we've got a Growler Cup update, Bill.
Oh, yeah. So, believe it or not, somebody actually predicted that we would lose 1-5 to Toronto.
Really?
Yes. So Matt Long, one of our longtime listeners, obviously is not feeling very confident about the team. Not that anybody really, I don't think anybody picked a win or anything at this point. But yeah, he predicted a 1-5 loss. So he actually got 5 or 6 points out of this round, which propelled him to the top. So he is actually sitting in first place in the Growler Cup with his 6 points. We do have 3 people tied for second, Joe Collier, Claire Hughes, and Sarah Spriggs. So now that we've narrowed down the field to our 12 finalists, I guess we're game 2 now. No, game 3.
Yeah, you're right.
Game 3, right? I don't know. Anyway, 27, 28.
You're right. You're right. Yeah, Crew was the last game of the final round. Then they had the Dallas match, and then this past weekend against Toronto FC.
Yeah, so it's actually only 2 games.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, so we're game 2 into 7 games of the final, and it's a pretty close match. Obviously, still with 4 people within 1 point at the top of the table. But yeah, it's fun to watch our expert predictors and see what they're thinking.
Turns out, I believe it's 3 matches because they had a game of NYCFC in there. So
yeah, that's right.
Yep, it is 3. So our thanks to Omni Printing and Promotions for sponsoring the Growler Cup this year. It's not too late to get in, even though this year is practically over. Go donate and so sign up to become a supporter over at CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com/support at the $5 a month level, and you'll be in for next year's Growler Cup. So a lot of folks emailing us lately that they haven't been getting the emails. If you haven't been getting the emails, unfortunately, that means you are not in the final round. And just like the Bengals and Reds and, well, now FC Cincinnati, there's always next year. All right, time to wrap things up here on the show. Final thoughts. I'll start with you, Brad. Again, as always, appreciate all that you do for the show. You bring it each and every week with your analysis, but you got any final thoughts?
Yeah, part of when I joined CST, what made me most excited about this, besides the chance to get to sit around and talk to other soccer nerds about the matches and about play and about things, was also the chance to help to provide maybe a little bit of education and some things, people, maybe even really smart soccer people that don't always see the tactical side of things all the time. So I'm grateful to be able to write some articles. Rupesh asked a question about midfield positioning in a 4-3-3, and I have an article coming out on that soon. And, if you guys are curious about anything else, shoot us an email, feedback at CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com, or hit us up on Twitter. My personal Twitter handle is at FC Cincy Tac Talk, and we'll see what we can do about answering some questions.
I've definitely learned a lot from Coach this year. He's been a welcome addition to the squad because you're right. His tactical analysis is top notch. And if you're not reading his articles over on the website, what are you doing? Get over there. CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com. Brad does a great job with those. So, Coach, again, thank you for being with us this week.
Yeah, thanks, Soups.
All right, final thoughts from the Wolfman, Bill Wolf.
Oh gosh, yeah. At some time, it's kind of been a long season, and at the same time, it's kind of shocking that it's basically over. I mean, we're down to 3 home games left, and I looked at the schedule, and it's like a Wednesday, a Saturday, and a Sunday. So not some great days. Hopefully, I know the team's not doing great, but hopefully people make the effort still to come out, especially for that Wednesday game. I'd love to see a decent crowd there for that. We just keep making the noise as best we can, supporting the team, and as Coach has said a few times here, trying to look and glean what we can of what's coming. So find the positives and just be there for the orange and blue.
Yeah. Good stuff as always, Bill, and appreciate you being back with us, man. It's been a while, but you brought it as always.
Yeah, I got on the writing schedule quite a bit this month, so I'm going to be like busy all month long with CST.
Nice.
So,
well, we thank you for your efforts, buddy.
Yeah, always happy to help.
My final thoughts this week. I failed to mention it last week. A few weeks ago, Brian was on the show talking a little smack about Moeller and LaSalle. We had a little wager on the first match of soccer this year. Well, I'm proud to say that my Moeller Crusaders put a whooping on Brad's and Brian's LaSalle Lancers last week, 7-1. Woo! So I won a 4-way onion and 2 cheese conies the next time I come down to Cincinnati. Of course, I made another bet over the weekend with Ken Hetker that the Bearcats would lose by 21 points or more. So I'm sitting pretty in Skyline, folks, when I come back down to town. So I'm looking forward to that. But congratulations to the Moeller Crusaders, again, continuing to be ranked. I saw today they were ranked 4th in the state of Ohio in the coaches poll. Again, coming off a really great year last year, state runner-up in Division I. Mike Welker's doing a great job with that program. So I'm going to keep talking about my Moeller Crusaders as much as I possibly can until y'all get sick of me, which will be quite a bit. All right. That is going to do it for this episode of Cincinnati Soccer Talk. Make sure you get subscribed to CST so you don't miss a single episode of the podcast, including this week's March to Match Day with Tristan Demore from the Pro Soccer USA website, where we will preview the Montreal match this upcoming week. So, for Brad Goff, Coach Brad Goff, and the Wolfman, Bill Wolf, I'm Subs, reminding you to watch your tackles, and we will see you all next week.